The rain hadn't stopped all morning. It slid down the glass of the old bus window like melted silver, blurring the city into nothing but motion and noise. I sat quietly, clutching my worn leather folder against my chest, the same one I'd carried to every failed interview for the past 6 months. My name is Mia, 27, degree in business. Experience in everything except keeping a job that didn't break me inside. Today, though, felt different. The company I was heading to, Hallstrom & Co., wasn't just another office. It was sleek, powerful, and intimidating. And the position, assistant to the director, was my last shot before rent, before overdue bills, before collapse. When I reached the building, the marble floors reflected everything: ambition, fear, even the sound of my hesitant footsteps. The receptionist smiled politely and pointed me to the top floor. "Director Elena will see you now," she said. That name, Elena, I had read it countless times in the job post, but hearing it out loud sent a strange shiver through me. The elevator ride felt endless. By the time the doors opened, I had rehearsed every answer, every polite smile. Then I saw her. Elena. She stood behind her desk like someone carved out of quiet confidence. Tall, graceful, with dark hair tied back and eyes that seemed to study everything they looked at. Her office wasn't cluttered. It was cold, precise, much like her. "Miss?" she asked without looking up from her file. Mia Sanders," I managed. "Sit." Her voice wasn't harsh, but it had weight, the kind that made you listen. I sat, trying not to let my trembling hand show. She skimmed my resume, and I caught a faint scent of her perfume, sharp yet soft. Something floral that lingered in the air. "You've changed 4 jobs in 2 years?" she said finally. "Yes," I replied. "But I learned something from each one." "Good, because here we don't have space for slow learners." She looked at me then, directly, piercingly. For a moment, I forgot the city, the rain, the months of struggle. I only saw those eyes, steady, unreadable, a storm of their own. "Why do you want this job, Miss Sanders?" I swallowed. "Because I need to prove I can do something right, even if it kills me." That earned the smallest flicker of something on her lips. Not quite a smile. More like acknowledgement. "Honesty," she said. "Rare. You start Monday." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me yet," she replied, standing. "Just be useful." My first week at Hallstrom & Co. was a blur of emails, coffee runs, and late nights spent trying to understand Elena's moods. She wasn't cruel, just impossible to read. Some mornings she'd compliment my reports with a quiet "good work." Other days she'd walk past me as if I didn't exist. Her presence filled the office even when she wasn't speaking. The click of her heels, the steady rhythm of her typing, the subtle lift of her eyebrow whenever something wasn't perfect, all of it made me want to do better. To be seen, and that frightened me more than I wanted to admit. Once, during a meeting, our hands brushed when I passed her a document. The touch was accidental, quick, meaningless, but it sent a spark up my arm, a warmth that stayed long after she'd turned away. I tried to ignore it, bury it under professionalism and exhaustion. But every time she looked at me, that warmth returned, unwanted, uninvited, undeniable. Friday evening came drenched in rain. Most employees had already left. I stayed late, finishing reports that Elena needed for Monday. My umbrella had broken that morning, and I dreaded walking home soaked. Elena's office light was still on. She was standing by the window, looking out into the storm, phone pressed to her ear. I caught fragments of her conversation. "No, not tonight. I'm tired. Please, just stop." Her voice wasn't her usual composed tone. It cracked slightly, humanly. When she noticed me standing by the door, she ended the call abruptly. "Still here?" she asked, turning. "Yes, just finishing the files." She nodded, eyes softer than usual. "You're diligent." Most assistants disappear by 6. I guess I don't have anywhere better to go, I said without thinking, her lips curved faintly. Not a smile, exactly, but something close. Then she looked toward the rain again. Do you have an umbrella? No. Without another word, she opened her drawer and pulled out a black one, sleek, new. She walked toward me, close enough that I could see the faint tiredness beneath her eyes. Take this. She said, Oh, I can't. Take it, she repeated, voice gentle but firm. You'll need it more than I will. Our hands met as she passed it to me. Just a second, skin against skin, but something inside me shifted. Her hand was warm, steady, but her eyes told another story. Loneliness, maybe, or something she didn't let anyone see. Thank you, I whispered. She stepped back, her expression unreadable again. Good night, Mia. Good night, director. Outside, the rain softened to a quiet drizzle. I walked slowly, the umbrella shielding me from the sky's sorrow, but not from my own. My heart felt heavy with something I couldn't name. Gratitude? Admiration? Or the beginning of a dangerous curiosity? When I reached home, the city lights blurred through my window like fading dreams. I opened my old diary, the one I hadn't touched in months, and wrote, Why do I feel something I shouldn't? I closed it quickly, as if the words might escape and expose me, because deep down, I already knew this wasn't just a job anymore, Dot. It was something else. Something that would change everything. The weeks that followed moved like quiet waves, steady, unspoken, yet full of undercurrents. I learned Elena's rhythm. Her coffee must be strong and black, her meetings perfectly timed, her world impeccably organized. And somewhere in between scheduling, typing, and answering calls, I realized I had become more than just an assistant. I had become her shadow. She trusted me with everything, from confidential files to last-minute presentations. I was always nearby, late nights, business dinners, client visits, and though I told myself it was only work, something deeper began to hum beneath the surface. Elena was different when we were alone. Less composed, less armored. One evening, while preparing for a client event, she entered the conference room wearing a dark suit that fit her like it had been made for her alone. You always make this place feel less chaotic, she said as she reviewed the files I'd arranged. I looked up, startled. I just try not to disappoint you. Her eyes met mine briefly, calm, unreadable, before she said, You don't. It was such a simple word. You don't, but it lingered in the air and in my chest, far longer than it should have. That night, while waiting for the car to take us to the event, she leaned closer to adjust a pin on my jacket. The faint scent of her perfume filled the space between us, jasmine and something sharper. Her hand brushed my collarbone, lightly, intentionally. There, she murmured. Perfect. I swallowed hard. Thank you. Her eyes held mine for a heartbeat too long. Then she turned away. After that evening, small gestures began to bloom like quiet secrets. The way she stood beside me during meetings, so close that I could feel the warmth of her arm. The way she let her hand linger when passing me a document. The way her gaze softened when I smiled, as if she were memorizing something she shouldn't. One morning, while I placed her coffee on the desk, she said suddenly, You smell different today. I froze. Oh, it's just new perfume. She tilted her head slightly. It suits you. It's soft. My heart thudded, ridiculous and loud. Thank you, director. Her lips curved faintly. Elena, when we're alone, you can call me Elena. I nodded, but I never used it. Saying her name felt too intimate, too dangerous. Whispers floated around the office about Elena's long-term partner, a woman from another firm. I had seen her once, dropping by during lunch. Beautiful, older, elegant. The kind of person who looked like she belonged beside Elena. That knowledge made everything worse. Every glance, every brush of skin, every silence between us, it all felt forbidden. But desire isn't something you can silence with logic, and sometimes, the more you fight it, the louder it grows. One night, after a late client dinner, we returned to the office to drop off files. The city was asleep, the building empty except for the echo of our footsteps. I followed her into her office. She placed the files on her desk and turned toward me. "Thank you for staying so late," she said quietly. "It's all right," I replied. "I like helping you." She smiled faintly. "You say that like you mean it." "I do." Silence followed, the kind that stretches between people who know they've already crossed an invisible line. Then, softly, she walked to the door and turned the lock. The click echoed in my chest. I froze. "Elena?" She didn't answer immediately. She just leaned against the door, her voice suddenly smaller, trembling at the edges. "Mia, stay for a moment." I nodded, unable to find my voice. She took a step forward. The space between us shrank until I could hear her breath, uneven, fragile, real. "I've been trying to ignore this," she whispered, "but every day it gets harder." My throat felt dry. "Ignore what?" Her eyes met mine, glassy, vulnerable. "This, us, whatever it is that's happening." I shook my head slightly, my voice almost breaking. "Elena, we shouldn't, I know," she said quickly. "I know. I've told myself that 1,000 times." She laughed softly, bitterly. "I have someone who loves me, or at least I think she still does. And you deserve better than to be dragged into this mess." I took a step back, torn between reason and the aching pull in my chest. "Then why lock the door?" She hesitated, and in her silence was the answer. "Because I can't pretend anymore," she whispered. "Not tonight." She reached out, fingers trembling slightly as they brushed my wrist. "Tell me I'm not the only one feeling this, Mia." My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. "Elena," I began, but the rest of the words dissolved. She moved closer, so close that her forehead nearly touched mine. I could feel the warmth of her skin, the scent of her perfume, the fear in her breath. "Do you feel it too?" she asked, voice barely audible. I couldn't lie. Not when her eyes looked like that, full of something between longing and despair. "Yes," I whispered. "I do." The world seemed to stop. The rain outside hit the windows like a drumbeat of warning. Her lips trembled as she exhaled, and her eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall. "I've built my whole life on control," she said quietly. "But with you, I'm losing it." She looked at me one last time, as if weighing every risk, every consequence. Then she said, almost pleading, almost commanding, "Kiss me. Hurry before I lose my courage." And before I could think, before I could stop myself, the air between us turned into something fragile, dangerous, and beautifully irreversible. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The room felt suspended between right and wrong, between restraint and surrender. I could hear the faint ticking of the clock, the rain whispering against the glass, and the uneven rhythm of our breaths. "Elena," I said softly, one last attempt at reason, but she shook her head, voice trembling. "Don't say anything. Just don't." Her hand brushed my cheek, hesitant, fragile. The warmth of her fingers made the air between us dissolve. And before I knew it, her lips found mine dot. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't graceful. It was trembling, desperate, full of unspoken pain. Her kiss tasted like rain and regret. My hands, unsure where to go, found her shoulders. She pressed closer, not in hunger, but in longing. The kind that comes from years of being untouched in ways that matter. For that one moment, I forgot the world. Forgot who she was, who I was supposed to be. It was just two souls, broken in different ways, finding something dangerously beautiful in each other. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were wet, her voice unsteady. I shouldn't have done that, she whispered. I'm sorry. I tried to speak, but words wouldn't come. So I just stood there, heart pounding, the echo of her touch still alive on my skin. Then, slowly, she sank into the chair behind her desk, the same desk where she'd built her empire of control, and buried her face in her hands. I haven't felt alive in years. Mia, she said, her voice cracking. Do you know what that's like? To be surrounded by success, people, admiration, and still feel like you're drowning? I stepped closer, unsure whether to comfort her or to run. Why are you telling me this? Because you look at me like I'm still human, she said softly. Like I'm not this machine everyone thinks I am. Her honesty broke something in me. I sat down on the edge of her desk, trying to steady my voice. I know that feeling, I said. To give everything to people who don't really see you. To pretend you're fine while you fall apart quietly. She looked up at me then, eyes raw and searching. Someone broke your heart, didn't they? I smiled sadly. Maybe. Or maybe I broke my own trying to love someone who never loved me back. Silence again, thick and fragile. Then, without warning, she reached out and took my hand. Stay, she whispered. Just for tonight. Don't leave me alone. And though every rational part of me screamed that this was wrong, that I should walk out that door and never look back, I stayed. Hours blurred into whispers, confessions and long silences. We didn't talk about work or the world outside. We talked about emptiness, about the little wounds people carry but never showed out at some point. Elena stood by the window, staring at the rain sliding down the glass. The city lights shimmered in her reflection like ghosts. Do you ever wonder, she said quietly, how something can feel so right and so wrong at the same time? All the time, I replied. She turned to face me. The distance between us felt sacred, something neither of us had the courage to name. Then she crossed it slowly, hesitantly, as if each step was a confession. Her fingers found mine again, and this time I didn't pull away. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and I felt her sigh, a sound that carried years of exhaustion. We didn't kiss again. We didn't need to. The silence said more than words ever could. She wrapped her arms around me, and I held her back, feeling her heartbeat through the thin fabric of her blouse. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming softly, like the world was mourning with us stopped for that night. The office stopped being a place of work. It became a fragile world of its own, a secret built on borrowed time. When morning came, sunlight crept through the blinds like an unwelcome truth. Elena stood by her desk, hair undone, her usual armor gone. For a moment, she looked younger, softer. I smiled faintly, unsure what to say. But when her eyes met mine, something had changed. Mia, she said quietly, we can't let this happen again. Her tone was steady now, professional, cold. I froze. What last night was? A mistake, she said, turning away. I crossed the line. We both did. But you, I know, she interrupted. Don't make this harder. The wall was back, invisible but unbreakable. She picked up her folder, adjusted her jacket, and added, we have a meeting at 10. Make sure the reports are ready. And just like that, she was gone. The rest of the day passed in a blur of noise and silence. She didn't look at me once, didn't speak to me unless it was work-related. Every word she said felt rehearsed, distant, mechanical, and yet I couldn't stop thinking about her, about the warmth of her touch, the way her voice trembled when she said my name. It felt like I had lived a lifetime in one night, only to wake up in someone else's story later that week. While grabbing coffee in the break room, one of the junior analysts smirked at me. You and the boss seem close, he said casually. My heart skipped. What do you mean? Oh, nothing. He shrugged. Just people notice things. The late nights, the way she looks at you sometimes. I forced a smile, but inside panic bloomed like wildfire. Rumors, the one thing Elena would never tolerate. When I returned to my desk, Elena was in her office talking on the phone, her face unreadable. For a second, our eyes met through the glass wall. She looked away instantly. That single glance told me everything. Whatever had happened between us, whatever fragile thing we'd shared, she was already burying it. That night, I sat alone at home, staring at the same umbrella she'd once given me. The rain was falling again, just like it had that first evening. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't because the truth was she hadn't used me, and she hadn't loved me either. We had both simply fallen into the same loneliness and mistook it for something deeper. Still, every time I closed my eyes, I could feel her breath, her trembling words, "Kiss me, hurry," before I lose my courage. And I knew that no matter how much I tried, I'd never be the same again. The air inside the office had changed. The laughter that used to echo softly between the walls had vanished, replaced by the dry rustle of papers and the clicking of keys. Elena no longer lingered by Mia's desk in the mornings. No more quiet good job, as no more late-night talks over cold coffee. She had built a wall so high around herself that Mia could barely see the woman she once knew. Days stretched into weeks. Meetings that once felt alive with connection became mechanical routines. Elena's voice grew colder, stripped of the warmth it once carried. She canceled their weekly dinners. She stopped staying late. She smiled for clients, for her team, for everyone but Mia. Mia tried to tell herself it was stress, that deadlines, pressure, and reputation had simply caught up to her. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that. Something inside Elena had shut off, and whatever they had shared had been buried beneath professionalism and fear. Still, Mia couldn't help watching her. Every time Elena entered the room, her heartbeat stumbled. Every glance, even the brief ones, felt like a small ache in her chest. But Elena didn't look back anymore. It was as if that night, that fragile, forbidden moment they had shared, had been erased from existence. One evening, when the sun was melting into the city skyline, Mia stayed behind under the pretense of finishing reports. She told herself she was just working late, but she knew the truth. She wanted to see Elena, even if from afar. When she finally looked up from her desk, she saw her boss through the glass window near the parking lot. Elena stood under a streetlight, her posture soft, her expression light. Another woman stood close to her, tall, graceful, with familiar features. Mia's breath caught. She had seen her once before at a corporate event, introduced casually as an old friend. The woman's hand brushed Elena's arm. They laughed, their closeness effortless, natural, the kind of intimacy that didn't need to hide. Mia froze. For a long moment, she just stood there, her reflection merging with the glass, watching a version of love that wasn't hers to claim. The ache inside her turned into a quiet, hollow pain. She realized then that she had never really been a part of Elena's life, only an escape, a soft place to fall when the world was too heavy. She turned away before tears could blur her vision, gathering her things quietly. The office felt colder as she walked through it, the hum of computers, the distant rain tapping against the window, all blending into silence. When she got home, the city lights outside her apartment looked like tiny wounds in the dark. She sat by the window, replaying everything in her mind, the way Elena had smiled, the way she had touched that woman's arm so easily, the way she had once touched hers. By Monday, the distance between them had become unbearable. Elena avoided every opportunity to be alone with Mia. She spoke to her through emails, through assistants, through walls. Each day, the silence between them grew heavier, thicker, impossible to ignore. Finally, one late afternoon, when everyone had left, Mia couldn't take it anymore. She stepped into Elena's office, her voice trembling but firm. "Elena, we need to talk." Elena didn't look up from her laptop. "About what?" "You know what?" The silence stretched. The air between them pulsed with everything left unsaid. Mia's voice broke slightly. "You've been pretending that nothing happened between us. Pretending that night didn't mean anything. But it did, at least to me." Elena closed her laptop slowly, her face pale, her expression guarded. "Mia, please don't. Don't what?" Mia interrupted. "Don't remind you of what you did, or don't make you feel guilty for walking away." Elena rose from her chair. Her eyes glistened under the dim office light. "You don't understand what this could do to me, to both of us. My partner, my position, everything I've built." Mia laughed bitterly, tears already blurring her vision. "So I was just something to fill the emptiness, right? Just another mistake you can hide behind your success." Elena's voice cracked. "You were never a mistake. Then what was I?" Elena looked down at the floor, her composure finally breaking. "You were the only real thing I've felt in years," she said softly. "But I can't destroy my life for it." For a moment, neither of them moved. The sound of the rain outside filled the silence. Mia stood there, her heart beating too fast, too loud, until the weight of it all became unbearable. "Then maybe you never deserve something real," she whispered. She turned to leave, and as she reached the door, Elena called out, her voice barely audible, full of everything she couldn't say. But Mia didn't stop. She walked down the hallway, each step echoing like the end of something once beautiful. Tears streamed silently down her face as she reached the elevator. Her reflection in the mirrored door looked fragile, a woman who had loved too deeply, too quietly, too wrong. When the doors closed, she whispered to herself, "It's over," but the ache in her chest said otherwise. Outside, the rain poured harder, washing away the city lights, blurring everything in sight. And somewhere behind her, in an office full of glass and silence, Elena stood alone, her hands trembling, her lips pressed tight, watching the door Mia had walked through and realizing that some losses can't be fixed with power or apologies. Love had lived between them once, hidden, fragile, and wrong. Now it lived only in shadows, fading quietly into the night. And as Mia stepped out into the rain, she finally understood sometimes love doesn't end with anger or closure. Sometimes it just dissolves into silence. But even silence, she knew, could hurt forever. The next morning, the whispers began. It started with whispers, subtle poisonous ones that crept through the corridors before Mia even knew what they were whispering about. At first, she brushed it off. People at the office always had something to gossip about. But that morning felt different. The glances were longer, sharper. The laughter that used to be friendly now carried a cruel edge. When she reached her desk, her phone buzzed with a message from Hannah, one of the few people who'd ever been kind to her. "Mia, don't open the company chat." But of course she did. Her heart stopped. There they were, photos from the company dinner 2 weeks ago. One showed Elena leaning close, her hand grazing Mia's arm. Another caught a moment where Mia looked at her boss with an expression far too soft, too intimate. And then there was the last one, a blurry image, but unmistakable. Elena's hand on Mia's waist as they stood in the shadow of the restaurant doorway. The captions were cruel. "Looks like the director has her favorite, so that's why she works late." Each word sliced through Mia's chest like a blade. She could almost feel the laughter echoing behind her back as she walked down the hall. By noon, she got the email, "HR meeting at 2 p.m., confidential." When she arrived, Elena was already there, sitting across the polished table with perfect posture, her face calm but pale. The HR manager looked from one woman to the other with a forced smile. "There have been rumors," she began. "And unfortunately, photos." Elena spoke first, her voice steady, professional, cold. "There's nothing inappropriate between us," she said. "Mia is my assistant. The photos were taken out of context." Mia's breath caught. Elena didn't look at her, not even once. The HR manager turned to her. "Mia, do you confirm this?" Mia's throat tightened. She could barely form words. Elena's eyes flickered up, just for a second a silent warning, or maybe a plea. "Don't ruin me, Dot," and in that single look, Mia understood everything. Elena wasn't going to protect her. Not their story, not their truth. Only herself. "Yes," Mia whispered finally, her voice hollow. "It's just a misunderstanding." The HR woman nodded. "Thank you both for clarifying. Miss Torres, you may leave." "Mia, please stay behind for a moment." Elena stood, gave a polite nod, and walked out. No glance back. No word. Just the sound of her heels fading down the hallway. When the door closed, the HR manager sighed. "Mia, I'm afraid we can't have this kind of attention. It's best if you take a leave, indefinitely." The polite version of "you're fired." By the time Mia returned to her desk, her computer login no longer worked. Her ID card blinked red at the elevator. Someone had already cleared her schedule. It was as if she'd never existed. That evening, she packed her things in silence, small, meaningless things that had once felt like part of her world. A coffee mug, a notebook, a pen Elena had once borrowed and never returned. As she passed Elena's office, she paused. Through the glass wall, Elena stood still, arms folded, staring out the window into the rain. Maya waited, hoped, but Elena didn't turn. Didn't move. Didn't care. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. The rain poured heavier as Mia stepped out of the building for the last time. 3 nights later, there was a knock at her apartment door. When she opened it, Elena stood there drenched in rain, eyes swollen, trembling. For a second, neither spoke. The sound of rain filled the space between them. Then softly, Elena said, "Mia, please. I need to talk." Mia hesitated but stepped aside. Elena entered, her expensive coat dripping onto the floor. She looked small, fragile, so unlike the woman who once commanded a room with a glance. "I never wanted to hurt you," Elena said. Her voice cracked. "You have to understand, they would have destroyed everything. My position, my partner, my reputation. I didn't have a choice." Mia stared at her, her hands clenched so tightly they shook. "You did have a choice," she whispered. "You just didn't choose me." Tears rolled down Elena's cheeks. "I love you, Mia, I still do." Mia's laugh came out hollow, broken. "If that's love, I'd rather not feel it again." Elena reached out, but Mia stepped back. The distance between them felt infinite now. The kind of distance you can't close with words. After a long silence, Mia looked at her and said quietly, "You already hurt me, Elena. You already did." She walked to the door and opened it. The sound of rain rushed in, cool and sharp. Elena stood there for a moment, her lips trembling, her eyes full of regret. And then she turned and left, swallowed by the darkness of the hallway. When the door clicked shut, the apartment felt impossibly still. Mia sank to the floor, her back against the wood, tears spilling freely now. For a long time, she sat there in silence, the memory of Elena's touch haunting her skin. Then the memories began to play in her mind, like scenes from someone else's life. Elena laughing over spilled coffee, the soft hum of her voice late at night, the rain tapping against the office window, her whisper, "Kiss me, hurry," the way her hands had trembled, the warmth, the chaos, the tenderness that had once felt so real. Each memory cut deeper until Mia could barely breathe. The next morning, she packed a single suitcase. No goodbye notes, no explanations. She didn't even tell anyone where she was going. At the train station, the city looked gray and endless. As the train began to move, she pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Watching the skyline blur, she thought of Elena, of everything they'd shared, everything they'd lost. For a moment, she imagined Elena standing in her office again, staring out at the rain, still pretending to be strong. "Goodbye," Mia whispered, her voice almost lost in the rhythm of the train, and as the city disappeared behind her, she felt something break loose inside her chest. Not peace, not healing, just an empty space where love used to live. The sound of the train drowned out her thoughts, and all that remained was the faint echo of what could never be Dot. By the time the sun dipped behind the hills, Mia was gone. Gone from the city, gone from the whispers, gone from the woman who had taught her that even love, when built on secrets, can destroy everything it touches. The rain had returned, soft, steady, and strangely familiar. It had been months since Mia left the city, yet the rhythm of the drops against her apartment window still carried memories she couldn't completely wash away. Her new life was quiet, a small design firm near the coast, colleagues who smiled politely, and evenings filled with the hum of solitude. She no longer rushed through her mornings or feared the sound of closing doors. The chaos of her old life had been replaced with stillness, an almost healing kind of emptiness. But every now and then, when she caught a reflection in a glass wall, or the scent of Elena's perfume on a stranger, her chest tightened with something between longing and relief. Mia had rebuilt herself piece by piece. She rented a small flat overlooking the ocean, started painting again, and even laughed with her new team during lunch breaks. But deep inside, there remained a faint echo of that office, of glances that lingered too long, and of a love that burned in silence. She told herself it was just a phase, a storm that passed. But sometimes at night, when the world was asleep, she'd whisper to the empty room, "I wonder if she ever thinks of me." Then, one gray morning, a letter arrived. No sender's name, just her address scrawled in handwriting she recognized instantly, sharp, elegant, and trembling slightly like the person who wrote it. Her fingers hesitated over the envelope before tearing it open. Inside, there was no apology, no defense. Just a single line written on cream paper. "You made me remember I had a heart." For a long moment, Mia just stared at the words. Her throat tightened and tears welled up uninvited. She pressed the paper to her chest, as if trying to feel the warmth of the woman who had once held her so close, yet pushed her so far away. Outside, the sky darkened. Rain began to fall again, just as it had the night everything began. The night the office door clicked shut and Elena whispered, "Kiss me, hurry." Mia walked to the window, watching the droplets slide down the glass. The world looked blurred, softened, like a memory half forgotten. She thought about that letter, about what it didn't say. It didn't promise love or regret. It didn't ask for forgiveness. It was just acknowledgement, a quiet truth from one broken soul to another. And somehow that was enough. For the first time in months, Mia smiled, a real, faint, unforced smile. Not because the pain was gone, but because it had finally settled into something she could live with. She whispered softly, "Thank you, Elena, for the lesson." She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her journal, between sketches of raindrops and unfinished faces. Then she stepped outside, letting the rain touch her skin, cold but cleansing. Each drop felt like a goodbye, each breath like a new beginning. In voiceover, her thoughts unfolded, the kind that would carry through soft piano music for a faceless video. "I used to think love was supposed to fix you, that it was something that stayed forever. But sometimes love only visits, to remind you what it feels like to be alive." She looked up at the gray sky, eyes glistening but peaceful. "She taught me love can exist in the wrong place, at the wrong time, and still be real." The camera would fade slowly, from her standing in the rain, to the sound of soft thunder in the distance, to the gentle hush of piano notes echoing her quiet resilience. As the scene closed, her silhouette blurred behind the misted glass of her small apartment window, not broken anymore, just changed. A woman who had loved deeply, lost painfully, and lived to tell the story not as tragedy, but as truth. The rain outside whispered its final rhythm, and with it came the closing line, calm and reflective. Some stories don't end with forever, they end with understanding. And then silence, the kind that feels like peace after a long storm.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Your feedback is very valuable and will help us improve. May I kindly ask which country you are joining us from?